first time I realized something was wrong with this therapist was the moment he played a recording of me confessing to things I hadn't even done yet. He didn't bother with introductions, didn't ask the typical childhood parents' relationship questions. He simply led me into his office, offered me a seat, confirmed my name, glanced at my intake form, and said calmly, "Today, we'll start with the zero session." The room looked textbook perfect: warm, soft lighting, a bookshelf, a couple of plants, neutral art, a couch, an armchair. The silence felt a little denser than normal, but I blamed it on soundproofing. A clock hung on the wall, its second hand moving too smoothly, as if someone had polished away any chance of hesitation. "What's a zero session?" I asked. He smiled the way people smile when they've heard the same question 1,000 times. "It's the session before the first session. We start with what you're actually bringing here, not what you've rehearsed on the way over." He tapped the folder. "But what you can no longer avoid saying." He turned to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out an old voice recorder with worn buttons. On the side was a scratch shaped like a crooked letter K. I realized, with an uncomfortable jolt, that I knew exactly how that scratch got there, as if I'd once held the recorder and slipped with a key. But I was seeing it for the first time in my life. "We started working some time ago," he said casually, as if he were explaining the weather. "Today you finally decided to show up. That's good. Let's revisit where you began." He pressed play. Static hissed, and then my own voice filled the room. Tired, hoarse, carrying the tension that comes after talking too long. "I don't know what you did to me," Recorded Me said, "but every night I wake up in a different version of my life." I froze. I had never said those words, yet they sounded like something I could say, if I were cornered enough. That's not me," I said. "I never—" "Just listen," the therapist interrupted gently. "You can tell me what you feel after." On the recording, I continued. "Today I woke up with a wife I don't remember. Yesterday, an apartment I've never lived in. The day before, a city I don't think I've ever visited. And every time the world behaves as if it's always been that way. Only I'm the one who's late." I opened my mouth to argue, then noticed something impossible. The rhythm of my breathing matched the breathing on the recording. Not literally, but every strange inhale, every pause, aligned with what my body was doing now, as if I were trying to speak along with myself. "I'm not married," I said. "Never have been. And I've lived in one city my whole life. At the time of that recording, yes," the therapist said calmly. "At the time of the next one, that may change." Zero sessions. Don't follow calendars. A cold shiver ran down my back. I gripped the armrest. The leather felt warm, as if someone had been sitting there just moments before. On the recording, my voice went on. "I feel like I'm always arriving late to a life I already lived. Like someone else went through it for me, and I'm left with the leftover guilt." "Stop," I said. "That's just a poetic metaphor. You recorded someone else." "Someone else," he repeated with a small nod. "Let's call it that if it helps." He pressed a button, and the recording resumed seamlessly. Recorded Me said, "Yes, someone else. I like the way you phrased that." I whipped my head toward the therapist. His lips hadn't moved, but the recording answered me as if it had heard my thought rather than my voice. "What is this?" I asked. "This is you," he said patiently. "Just not here and not now. The zero session isn't a beginning. It's the junction where all your attempts to begin converge." I looked at the clock again. The second hand crawled smoothly. It read 2:07 p.m. I clearly remembered. It was 2:07 when I walked in. It was 2:07 when I sat down. And now, still 2:07. "The clock is broken," I muttered. For a zero session, that's normal, he said. We don't spend time here, we collect it. Keep listening. On the recording, I asked, how many versions of me have you listened to? The therapist's voice on the recording sounded slightly rougher, as if he'd been talking there longer than he'd been talking here. Enough to learn your favorite excuses, he said on the recording. I never asked that, I whispered. But you were going to, he answered. And that was enough for the question to appear somewhere. Something shifted inside me, a too clean, too precise displacement of reality, like being nudged half a pixel off center. Then Recorded Me laughed, but the laugh wasn't mine, sharper, bitter. All right, let's try this differently, he said on the recording. This isn't therapy, is it? This is culling. The therapist tilted his head thoughtfully. That word is a bit dramatic, he said, but closer than talking about feelings. Culling what? I asked. Not what, he corrected softly. Who? On the recording, I let out a long exhale. I felt my own diaphragm echo it, perfectly synchronized like a puppet tracing another puppet. You understand, Recorded Me said, that if even one version of me succeeded, the rest of us become unnecessary. The office went quiet. Not normal quiet, sound behaved strangely, as if my footsteps and swallowing were amplified, while the ticking clock drifted into another room. Do you believe in parallel realities? He asked. No, I said automatically. You live them, he replied. Every innocent, what if I had, is a branch. You refuse the choice, but your mind continues the simulation. Somewhere it completes, somewhere a different you emerges. And then there's the you who lingers. So you work with all of them? I asked. No. He smirked faintly. I work only with the ones who get stuck. The ones who keep returning to the zero session, trying to figure out why they're not the version who was given a life, but the one who was shelved. On the recording, I coughed. The cough rose in my chest a second later. The line between original and copy blurred. You're saying, I managed, I'm the defective version? You're the version who refused a choice, he said. Your rejected outcomes accumulated, and eventually, he gestured to the recorder. An archive formed. Recorded Me sounded sharper now. How many voices of mine are in there? Enough, Recorded Therapist said, but we care only about the one speaking loudest right now. The recorder blinked red. Recording. You're recording this? I asked. The zero session is always recorded, he said. The question is whether this becomes part of the archive or your baseline. Baseline for what? For the version of you that remains. A metallic chill ran along my skin. On the recorder, I started listing names, strangers, yet each one stirred a faint recognition, like half remembering an old password. Who are those people? I asked. Lives you damaged in various branches, he said calmly. In some, you made amends. In some, you died. In some, you ran. The residue of all these attempts collects in you. You're a knot of regrets. I tried to laugh it off. Failed. That sounds poetic. Too conceptual to be real. He raised a brow. You still think you're in the real world? The clock remained at 2:07. I stood, touched the glass. Cold. The hand still moved. You probably reset it recently, I said weakly. You've entered this office 14 times, he replied. In 14 branches. The clock always reads 2:07, and every time you get up to check it. You're predictable, just not in the way you hope. What happened in the other branches? I asked. In most, you leave, calling this nonsense. In some, you try to smash the clock. In two, you try to turn off the recorder. In two, and what? They remained in the archive of incomplete sessions, he said. You know what it feels like to be stuck forever, trying to mute a sound. Something deep inside me recognized that feeling. It recorded me whispered, "What do you want from me?" "Not me," said the therapist. "The system. It needs stable timelines. You generate noise. Your attempts to jump into a correct life destabilize branches. The zero session filters them. So you're deleting me? I'm helping you understand. You're not the chosen instance of your life. You're its echo. And once you accept that, there's no need to hold you." "And the others?" I asked. "They keep living, sometimes waking with guilt they can't explain, sometimes sensing something unsaid. You, this you, are that unsaid thing, the remainder." The recorder clicked. The red light stayed on. "Why am I hearing this now?" I asked. "If I'm just one of... Because this version of you resisted the longest," he said. "You came here, left, forgot, remembered, demanded proofs. Eventually the archive can't hold all the unresolved fragments, so it allows one partial awareness session." I swallowed hard. "Do I have a choice?" "You have the illusion of one," he said gently, "which is all you ever had." Recorded me suddenly snapped. What if I destroy everything? Smash the clock, the recorder, walk out, ignore all of this? "You've done that," recorded therapist replied. 4 times. It changed nothing except creating more versions to process. I sat down again, staring at the recorder. "If I agree," I whispered, "what happens at the end?" "At the end, you realize this was your first honest session," he said. "And then, you disappear. I won't feel it. You'll feel a moment of clarity. Very brief. Enough." Silence on the recording. Heavy, suffocating silence. My chest tightened with it. Then recorded me said, "All right, let's do it." I looked at the therapist. "This already happened?" "This," he said, "is happening." And suddenly the recording and my own voice aligned perfectly. No delay, no distinction. One voice. "How is this possible?" I whispered. "Simple," he said. "You finally caught up. Until now, you were always one step behind the you sitting in this chair. Now, you're synchronized." The clock jerked. The second hand jumped forward a full minute. 2:08 p.m., and I felt it. As if all the other versions of me, fearful, brave, bitter, kind, broken, healed, turned toward me at once across 100 rooms, silently asking, "Well, can you show me them?" I asked. "Just for a second, someone who made it." He shook his head. "That would break stability, but you'll feel them as warmth. They don't need to know what you went through, so they wouldn't have to." I wanted to be angry. I wasn't. Only a soft, deep exhaustion rose inside me. "Tell me," I said quietly. "Who are you, really?" He paused. "I was once a version who couldn't let go," he said. "Then I was offered work. To stay and explain what was once explained to me. The zero session isn't punishment. It's recruitment." The recorder pinged, like checking off a box. "And my chances?" I asked. "For the position, decent," he said. "For life, not relevant anymore." The clock chimed once, a final, gentle sound. Like the soft close of a laptop you'll never open again. Everything sharpened. The book titles, the scratch on the recorder, the creases around his eyes. I understood, with piercing clarity, how much life I'd wasted trying to find the perfect place to begin. Is this the clarity?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "It's usually enough." Far away, someone woke in the middle of the night with a sudden urge to book a therapy appointment. Someone else opened their phone and typed, "I need to stop postponing my life." Someone slammed on their brakes just in time, in a branch where I hadn't. None of it appeared as images, just feelings. Relief, that wasn't mine. And if I don't want to disappear, I asked, though I knew. You wanted to many times, he said. Now you're just agreeing with what already happened. The recorder clicked, the red light died, and in the final moment, before everything folded softly like a page being closed, I heard my voice. Not from the speaker, not from my throat, but from somewhere beyond questions. Thank you for finally showing up on time.